Chapter 2. Detective Harriet Foster moved fast through the CPD cop lot at 18th and State, her eyes shielded by a squint against a light sleet focused on the door of the station. Cold, wet ice pellets pinged against her face in a mildly unpleasant way, like a barrage of tiny needles. Late February was holding on with a tight grip, winter refusing to even think about ceding an inch to the coming spring. The lucky ones were asleep in their beds on this cold winter's morning, the devout up and preparing for church, but Harriet was here, ahead of her shift, and it didn't matter to her overmuch whether it was Sunday or Tuesday, midnight or noon, Christmas or Groundhog's Day. Whole day, gray, Chicago. Maybe nobody would kill anyone today, she thought. It was a common wish, not a prayer, one rarely granted. A car horn sounded aggressively. Startled, Harri reeled, lowering her bag to the slush, her right hand going for the zipper on her jacket, ready to open her coat to get the gun at her hip. Her eyes scanned the cars in the lot, looking for the threat, then landing on an idling black Subaru Outback with its headlights on. Recognizing the car, she breathed a sigh of relief, and her hand moved away from the zipper, and she picked up her bag. The car belonged to her boss, Sergeant Sharon Griffin. Through the side window, she could see her sitting in the driver's seat. Harri waved to the blonde enforcer, expecting a simple wave of acknowledgement back. Instead, the passenger window rolled down, and Griffin beckoned her one over with the come hither of a manicured index finger. The heat out in your office? Harri asked when she met the Outback. There was strange music coming out of Griffin's speakers, like the sound of cats drowning in a whirlpool, and then somebody beating their dead carcasses against a drum. The chords were loud, discordant, discombobulating. Griffin clicked the door locks free. Get in. Harri stared at the radio. What's that? It's a radio, Griffin said. She slid Griffin a look. On the radio. Are you serious? That's Drowsy Maggie, Griffin replied, as if that was all she needed to say. You're telling me you don't know the chieftains? Harri shook her head, lost. She figured it was some Irish thing, since nobody was more Irish than Griffin. The boss's office was filled with Kelly green hats and banners and shamrock decals. Even the knobby shillelagh leaning against the wall behind her desk had green ribbons tied to it. Sergeant Sharon Griffin lived St. Patrick's Day all 365. Harri shook her head. Must have missed them. Is there news from Internal Affairs? Harri had been waiting weeks to hear if the department would investigate the calls and photos she'd received from the anonymous voice that appeared to implicate her former partner, Detective Glennis Thompson, in wrongdoing, and explain her putting a gun to her head and pulling the trigger. The images were seared into Harri's brain, G accepting an envelope from an unknown man in an unknown place. But Harri would never believe that G had been dirty. She was good police, family, and Harri would go to her grave fighting to prove it. Griffin punched the radio off and then turned in her seat to face Harri, fixing her with those icy blue eyes. All cop now. The chieftains and drowsy Maggie put away for another time. I wanted to catch you before you went in. We need to talk.